Hi viewers, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll show you how to avoid null pointer exception because one null value can crash your entire Java application. So we will see with the help of a scenario how to avoid this null pointer exception. This is our real world scenario. Let's understand this step by step and very cleanly. Suppose there is one user, he sends a request to get the user details by user ID from the database. Okay, he will be able to fetch the user details from the database. Okay, user sends a request to get the user details. System looks for the user in the backend. It will try to query for the user with the help of a user id and returns a corresponding user. Okay, now there are two possible outcomes. If user is found, the respective user details are returned. If user is not found, we will encounter a null pointer exception. Now how to handle this null pointer exception? We will first see this scenario, null pointer exception without optional class. Then we will jump on to the optional class, which is the best solution in real time. Now let's start understanding this scenario with the help of a code. You can see here optional demo. This is a simple Spring Boot application where you have the usual layers of a Spring Boot application: controller, repository, service, and model. All the usual layers present in the Spring Boot application. Now, before jumping into the controller layer, let me start from the repository layer. Okay, user repository class. Why? Because this is the root place. This is the root cause. This is the place where we will get the null pointer exception. Okay. Here you can see in line number 13, I have created a hash map. This will act as our database. This will acts as our database. Okay. Since my focus is just to explain optional and null pointer exception, we are not using a real MySQL or Postgres SQL database. Okay. Now this is a static block. This is used to preload some data into the hash map. This static block will be executed as soon as the user repository class will be loaded into the memory. Okay. Now here we have find by id method. With the help of the id provided, it is trying to get the value. Okay. How? Let me see first how values are stored in the hash map. This is the key and this is the value. Value is the user entity object. Okay. Now as soon as the value is returned, how is it is going back to the service layer? Let's go to the service layer. Here you can see in this method there is no null check from the repository. We are getting the user and we are storing it here. Okay, and simply we are returning user. Okay, and there is a possibility of coming null from the repository also. Okay, but let us see how this is going to the controller layer. Okay, in the controller layer, from the service we are getting the user object, and on top of the returned object we are calling get username and get user id. Okay, this is where we encounter null pointer exception if the user id is not present in the database. Let's see. Okay, so I'm requesting uh, for the user id 1 from the database. Okay, users is our api name. Let me show that to you here. This is our api, right? In the controller layer, base url is defined as users, and this is our api. I should just provide one id. Okay, I'm just providing one. Okay, let me hit send. Okay, This is because I did not start my Spring Boot application. Let me start my Spring Boot application. Hope my yes, our Spring Boot application has successfully started. Let's go back to post. Now I will hit this API. Status 200 OK. John and 1. This is the username and this is the user ID. We have successfully fetched the user details with the help of user ID. Okay. Why we have successfully fetched? Because we have inserted value 1 and John here. Okay. And we have inserted 2 and David also. These are the two values for now, as of now, present in our DB. Okay. Now we will request for something which is not present. Okay, we will request for 10 which is not present in our DB. Okay, DB only these two values are present. Now we will request for something which is not present in the DB. Let me hit yes. You can see here internal server error. Let's see what is that error. Okay, let me maximize the console. You can clearly see we have encountered a null pointer exception. Okay, user entity dot get username because user is null. Okay, where this line is present, obviously this is present in the controller layer, in the user controller. User dot get username, user dot get user ID. Okay, here this user has become null. Okay, this user is null. Okay, now on top of this null, we are calling method. That is why we are getting null pointer exception. Okay, now we have seen what is the problem we are facing. We will see how to solve this with the help of optional class. This would be our next step. Currently in our service class, that is user service, this is what the code is present. Okay, simply from the repository dot find by id method, we are storing the value uh, in the user variable of type user entity, and we are returning that value. Okay, so here you can see we did not use any optional class because in the user variable we may have null value. Okay, and that null value, if we return it, it may go to the controller layer. From service layer it may go to the controller layer, then we are getting null pointer exception. So now let's solve that. See, now what I'm doing is I'm clearing this. So I will write optional. I will not take any generic type. On top of optional, I'll call of nullable method. Inside of nullable method, I'll place this method called repository dot find by id. Okay, I'm placing this method call. Okay, so now on top of this, I will call orElseThrow method. What orElseThrow method will do? Okay, see, you already know of nullable method will create the object for optional class with the value coming from here. Okay, now if there is null value here, there will be empty optional object creation, and if there is any some value being written, and that value will be present in the optional object with the help of of nullable. So now orElseThrow will check inside the an optional object if there is any uh, if there is value or not. Okay, or else it is an empty It is an empty optional object. Okay, so or else throw method will find out inside what is there. Okay, a value or an empty optional. Okay, so if value is present, everything is fine, it will unwrap the value from the optional object and it will return that value. Okay, if empty optional, if the optional object is an empty optional, that means in case of null an empty optional object is created. In that case we will return a null pointer exception. For that purpose we are creating one lambda expression, runtime exception, runtime exception of type string, so that we can give a message. Okay, user id, user id you are looking for is not found. Okay, this is what the message we will put inside the or else. Okay, control yes. Now what we have to do, we have to clear this, we have to clear this and we will directly return this. Okay, that's it, simple. Inside or else throw method we have written one lambda expression, right? I will explain you how this entire line works. See, if value not equal to null, if value not equal to null, it will simply return, it will simply return value, else it will, else it will throw, else it will throw new runtime exception, else it will throw new runtime exception. Okay, this is how the internal code of or else throw method will be there. Okay, see why we are using or else throw here, to propagate the runtime exception to the controller layer. We don't want the exception to happen at this line and in this class. We are propagating the exception to the controller layer and there we will handle the exception. So here a value may be returned or else. So here a value may be written or else an exception may be thrown. Okay, this exception will be propagated to the controller class. Now let's see, is there any handling code present in the controller class to handle this runtime exception. Okay, we can see here service.getUser of id is being stored in the user variable. We are simply returning user.getUsername. Okay, so here in line number 24, from this method call, if we get an exception here at line number 24, we will get a runtime exception and our application will get crashed here. Okay, we don't have any handling code. So what we have to do, we will try to enclose this in a try block, surround with, surround with try catch block. Okay, see now instead of e dot print stack trace, let's get the message, because we have already written some message in the runtime object in the user service class. That's it. So now we will place this inside the try block. Let's store it in some variable. Let me do one thing, string. Let's declare it outside our try block. String user details. Okay. Now I will store this user details here. Okay. Now I will simply return this user details. Control space user details. Why we are still seeing an error? We have to initialize the variable, and now this is initialized. Okay. So now at line number 27, even though if an exception comes from the try block, execution control will go to the catch block and some message will be printed that we can see in the postman. Okay, so let's confirm that I'm running my application. Yes, application has started. So now if we send a request with user ID 11, earlier we have seen some internal server in the response here. Okay, so now we will not get that. Let's see. Let's send the request and see what would be the response. See, we missed one thing. We missed returning the e.get message. That is why we were getting status 200 okay and nothing in the response. Okay. Now I will rerun this for you again so that we will get a proper response with a message in case of an exception. Okay, you can see in the console it would already be running. Let's wait for the application to start. Yes, it has started. Let me go to Postman. I'm sending a request. You will now see the message. Yes, user ID you're looking for is not found. Okay, so in case of an exception, this is how we are handling the exception with the help of optional class. Now our application did not crash. A meaningful response is being shown to the user. Okay, so this is how we can avoid a null pointer exception. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to my channel Java Spring Vault for more interesting content like this with practical scenarios.